Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ed Boston. I don't even know what to call myself anymore. The Ed Boston Podcast Network. We're on YouTube. Anyway, this is our recap of the 2018 midterm elections. We're glad that you're with us. We decided to do this on video so that I can use some screen shots, and there's one that actually I made up myself. I took a beautiful picture that somebody shared with me and added a little bit to it, and so there I have something that is a good backdrop for us. And as we get ready to take off, let's just say a word of prayer for our country. Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the United States of America. I pray that you would heal our divisions and help us to turn back to the way that we have been in the past, a God-fearing Christian nation. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. The first thing I want to ask is, now that the election is over, can we start being Americans again and not Republicans and Democrats, not conservatives and liberals, not whatever label that you want to put on people, but let's go back to being Americans. Wouldn't that be nice? All of the division in the country, and well, I want to take a look at a couple videos that will kind of show the divisions in our country.
This a touching moment at the president's rally in Missouri. The crowd singing to support a woman after she collapsed on the floor. The president put the rally on hold as the crowd sang Amazing Grace and said the Lord's Prayer. The woman's condition this morning is unclear, but a very touching moment for a lot of people who were there.
Now we take a look at an opposite of what we just watched.
I consider it to be, as you know, Mr. President, caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me
And that's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much
if
better.
I may ask one other question, Mr. President.
That's
I was going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse me,
President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I have one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming down.
investigation because it's a hoax.
Are you-
That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation? Mr. President,
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
You see what I'm talking
Here
about?
we go.
We go from one
Washington Examiner.
we go from one video where we are looking at a crowd showing compassion and concern, and just amazingly showing their love of God, singing Amazing Grace. And then we go to the media, in particular Acosta from CNN, showing rudeness and great disrespect. And in turn, the president showing his own rebuttal in a rude manner. And you know, the president's detractors would say, that's a perfect example. And I would in turn say, that's a perfect example as well of what happens when you have the media trying to not get the story, but trying to see how they can just be the news instead of reporting the news. Let's look now at what happened yesterday. And let me get over to some different slides that I have. And that's not the one I want. And that's not what I want at all, actually. I want over here. There we go. Let's take a look at where we were before the election yesterday. The control of the House was in the hands of the Republicans, 235 to 193. There were 7 vacancies that had to be filled, and in all 435 seats were up for election, which is the case every 2 years. And then it was the Senate before 51-49, and with the election there was 7 races that they thought would be toss-ups, and that was probably pretty good on the prediction level. So let's take a look at what happened yesterday, and let's look at the positives for both parties, and not necessarily the positives and the negatives, but what's obviously positive for one would be considered a negative for the other. So in the House, no, that is the Senate. The way things stood when I took this picture a little bit ago, 51-46 in favor of the Republicans. The Republicans have swung 3 seats, so they're poised to take at least a couple more seats in the overall number, looking at probably 53-47, something to that effect. So the Republicans but increased their lead in the Senate. And actually, I was trying to go with the blue, but we'll go ahead and go with the red. So from the Republican standpoint, they retained the Senate. They flipped 3 seats and added to their hold. They didn't allow a blue wave, and that being a blue wave being where many people expected the Republicans to lose massive amounts of seats. As a matter of fact, let's look at some historical things here. The party of the incumbent president tends to lose ground during midterm elections. Over the past 21 midterm elections, the president's party has lost an average of 30 seats in the House and an average of 4 seats in the Senate. Moreover, in only 2 of those the president's party have gained in both. So it is normal for the president's party to lose in midterm elections. Now, let's look here. What happened in 2010, you can see here I've used Wikipedia. I don't normally, but they can get things like this right most of the time, so use them today. In 2010, 2 years after Barack Obama took office, the Republicans actually had a red wave take place and picked up 63 seats, as well as a gain of 6 Senate seats. That is what happened in 2010, and many people were expecting the same kind of thing to happen here in 2018. It didn't happen, and we see here the numbers earlier, 220, 196. You have to have 218 to gain control. So it's for sure that in a positive for the blue side, the Democrats, that they win the House. How many is still up for grabs. They're thinking maybe about 10, a lead of 10 over the Republicans, which isn't very sizable. So the positive for the Republicans is they didn't allow the blue wave, much like Obama did allow the red wave back in 2010. For the Democrats, they hold the House, or they win the House. They will now hold the Speaker of the House position. They will be in charge of all committees and have the chairman of all of those and have the number. A positive for the Democrats is that they did about what was normal. They think that they picked up about 24 seats. The average is 30. The numbers aren't totally in yet, but it looks like they have done what's normally expected. They didn't do anything outstanding or tremendous. They did about average. And I know my distractors will say, boy, you're sure taking this from a Republican slant. Well, let me get back to, I'm a Christian conservative, so I'm going to look at things from my point of view. I'm trying to do my best here to give you the positives for both sides, but I think that we have to understand that not everything was a negative just because the House was lost. And I think people are forgetting that today. One of the biggest things that happened yesterday was the fact that the Republicans gained in the Senate. Why is that important? The House has become very inefficient at getting things done. Them working together with the Senate isn't necessarily going like the founders had hoped. However, many of the things that happen today, a huge number of things that happen today, is ending up in the judicial system, being sued. Every time Trump does something, somebody sues, it ends up in the Court of Appeals, and you see where I'm going. So the judicial branch of the government is wielding power that is unprecedented and, quite frankly, not the way that the founders wanted things to go. But the positive for the Republicans and a huge negative for the Democrats is it is going to be even easier, not that it's easy at all, but it is going to be more attainable for the Republicans to nominate conservative justices, and there may be 2 more happen in the next bit. Age is getting there, and there's a couple of them that may be coming down to some of their last time in the position of Supreme Court Justice. And if the nomination took place today, then it would be difficult, but after January, there's going to be a few more votes to play around with there. And so it's a big thing for the Republicans to have stayed in control and gained better control of the Senate. Let's see. Want to look at a recap here from CBN. Several different topics that come into play after the press conference today. Let's listen.
Joins us now with some analysis of the president's post-election news conference and of the election itself. Welcome, Tiana.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First of all, your take on the president's heated exchange with CNN's Jim Acosta.
So naturally, what Acosta does is hardly reporting. It's closer to grandstanding than anything. And I don't think that President Trump is wrong to be upset with it. That being said, Trump does himself no favors when he calls the media blanket enemy of the people. It makes it a little bit more difficult for him to correctly criticize when reporters like Acosta do use an open forum just to try and get a viral clip to prove that they are part of the resistance.
Trump says he has to be aggressive, Tiana, because he's not treated fairly by the media. What are your thoughts on that?
So, again, my issue with the media's treatment of Trump is less that they are critical of him and more that they aren't equal opportunity critics. They took an 8-year break during the Obama administration, and as we saw with every single glowing profile of Beto O'Rourke, of Andrew Gillum, they are only hard on one party, and it's all determined by what letter you have after your name. So should Trump be as critical of the media asking legitimate questions about his presidency? I don't think so. Clearly, it resonates with his base. However, he's not wrong when he says that there is clearly a bias not only in coverage, but also in tone and tenor.
Moving on to the election itself and the shift of power in Congress, do you think that the Republicans and the president will be able to get anything accomplished? I mean, do you think that they and the Democrats are going to try to work together?
So, I'm going to remain hopeful. I think that if Nancy Pelosi wants to remain Speaker of the House, she knows that appealing to the most emotional and angriest portion of her base is not going to get much done for her agenda. I think that strangely, if Republicans wanted to make any progress on healthcare and wanted to slow the Democrats' rapid ascent into all supporting single payer, Republicans would be wise to take some of what Trump's HHS has done in terms of price transparency for the pharmaceutical industry and for hospital pricing, and perhaps package those into actual congressional bills. And perhaps that could get done. It is populist enough that I think you could actually get some takers in the Democratic Party. But again, it remains to be seen. We don't even know who the speaker will be, but assuming that it is Nancy Pelosi, I think that perhaps she will realize that this is an opportunity.
What was the biggest surprise to you last night, Tiana?
So I think the fact that Democrats lost the 3 most hyped races that they were out for, the race against Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke's loss, and the Florida governor and Senate seat. The fact that all 3 of those, given the amount of media attention, given the amount of hype, I mean, honestly, I was not expecting Beto to win. However, I assumed that one of the seats in Florida, just given not only the media hype, but also the polling, would have been taken by a Democrat. But apparently, I mean, Republicans did well. I mean, those last-minute rallies by Trump probably did help.
And I think that viewers are becoming more savvy, even though what they're hearing and seeing in the mainstream media at times.
Definitely. I mean, I think with this media environment, you have to be a little careful about not only what network you're receiving your news from, but the individual reporters as well. Not all reporters are created equally.
All right, Tiana Lowe with the Washington Examiner. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And so there's another take on what took place yesterday. I'm looking at my tabs here to see what I've got left. I wanted to mention that she hit on, and that's not where I want to be, she hit on the fact that gridlock, is there going to be compromise? Just remember this. Donald Trump is a master at the art of negotiation. I think he's going to take this as a huge challenge to try to get something done while the Democrats hold the House of Representatives. And will the conservative side of the aisle be happy with everything? I'm going to guess that's not going to be true. I think that in order to be able to get legislation through, that there's going to have to be compromise. And when compromise takes place, most everybody is upset a little bit about not getting everything that they wanted. But compromise is where we've got to be. You know, when we're not getting anything done because everybody hates everybody, who suffers? We suffer. We the people suffer. And so it's going to need to be a situation where we get something done. And if we're going to do that, people have got to work together. One of my favorite parts of yesterday and today, we've looked at some contentious things about the press conference today, but CNN, or CBN, not CNN, but CBN, in their story here that you see, one of the few productive and peaceful moments of the event, being the press conference, came when a Jewish reporter asked the president about God's place in his administration. Quote, "God plays a very big role in my life," Trump said. He pointed out that God's place is apparent in the lives of many members of his administration, including the vice president. When asked about congressional action the rest of the year, the president said he could not imagine taking up the issue of immigration and recognized the new House and Republican Senate may go in different direction when it comes to legislation. Areas for legislative agreement will be more limited. Again, there he's talking about the rest of this year with the lame duck House and Senate in place. Don't you love that? God plays a very big role in my life. We saw where at a Trump rally they sang Amazing Grace. And it's tough to reconcile, and sometimes legitimately so, when the president says things that are outlandish and over the top, when he calls people names, and when he, he's got a habit of saying very negative things toward women who oppose him on things. And he needs to get better at that. But it's hard for me to listen to all of these terrible stories about Donald Trump, and I've had to correct a liberal on a couple of different issues lately where they just got things plain wrong. How do you go from prayer at a rally to the Acosta? How do you go from prayer at a rally to Trump as Hitler? You see where I'm coming from? And we got to get past that. And one of the ways that we can get past that is this CBN story here, as they followed Vice President Pence on the final push.
You can see it. You can feel it. You can feel it.
With his wife Karen by his side, we spent the final hours of these midterms on Air Force Two with an optimistic vice president. From Montana to South Dakota. Hello, South Dakota! The crowds were enthusiastic, as was the VP.
The blue wave. We were just on Air Force One the other day. The president says the blue wave's dead. What's the answer on the blue wave we're hearing?
Well, we think the blue wave's going to hit a red wall all across this country. I think we're going to expand our majority in the United States Senate. I really believe we're going to hold the House of Representatives.
First stop, Montana, where the goal is to defeat a Senate Democrat living in big sky Trump country.
How much is Jon Tester in trouble here in Montana?
We think Matt Rosendale is in a great position to win this race. Jon Tester has been voting with the liberal agenda in the United States Senate every step of the way. Voted more than 90% of the time with President Obama's agenda. That's not Montana.
Pence's final pitch to voters is pretty simple and to the point.
Think about 4.5 million new jobs created, unemployment at a 50-year low, we're rebuilding our military, constitutional conservatives being appointed to our courts. And that's exactly what the president and I told the American people that we would do. And the Democrats, by contrast, it's been an agenda of obstruction.
But Democrats are fired up and turned off by this administration's policies. Immigration is close to the top of the list.
What do you make of some of the rhetoric coming, what they say is from this administration, on immigration?
We have a crisis of illegal immigration at our southern border. But this caravan that's moving north is deeply concerning to people all across this country. I hear about it every day. It's the reason why the president's made it clear that the caravan will not be allowed to enter our country illegally. And we're taking decisive steps. to administratively close the loopholes that human traffickers use to exploit vulnerable families and entice them to take the long and dangerous journey north.
Motivating the faithful base is Pence's main chore.
So if you're taking notes, I need you to vote.
If Republicans do well Tuesday night, Pence is pretty clear that the nonstop effort from President Trump will be a main reason.
Even though he's not on the ballot, he's campaigned as though we were. And I think that's the reason why we've seen such energy around the country. To be honest with you, David, as I've traveled around the country, I haven't seen this level of enthusiasm since the days just before the 2016 campaign.
Whatever happens Tuesday night, Mike Pence sees a larger hand at work in the country.
There seems to have been a cultural slide, obviously, for decades in this country. And along comes Donald Trump, God using imperfect people to accomplish his perfect will. What do you make of what's happened in this country since he's become president, and how you see this divinely, providentially playing out?
Well, I believe, as every president from George Washington forward believed in the role of providence in the life of this nation. And I really do believe that the prayers of the American people have made a difference. And even in these divided times, I really do believe those prayers are a pathway to heal our country and continue to move our nation forward.
The nation will soon find out what direction that means for the next 2 years. David Brody, CBN News, on Air Force Two with the Vice President. On Air.
All right, so the results have been mixed, and it is definitely going to be an interesting couple of years. It's not unprecedented having different parties in power. Happens that way a lot, and it's going to be a time where if people are willing to work together, we can get some things done. If they're not willing to work together, we'll have gridlock and hate and people being called Hitler and people being called libtards, and it'll be just a bad situation. Just wanted to mention the Jeff Sessions situation again. I believe Jeff Sessions is a good man. He was the very first senator that came out in support of Donald Trump, well before Trump was even being taken seriously at all. And he, I tried to do something there and it didn't help a whole lot. Let's just stay at that picture. He was as outspoken and supportive of Trump, even at the very end when some horrible things came out that Trump had said about women and different things. Sessions still stood behind him. Unfortunately, things took a terrible turn in March, I believe, of 2017, when Sessions recused himself from the Russia probe. The president has not, I'll just say, has not forgiven him for that. I don't know if forgiven is the right word, but their relationship went downhill from that point forward, culminating in the president asking for Sessions' resignation and Sessions putting that in today. I hope that Jeff Sessions is able to be a contributor to our country in the way that he has for a long, long time. I don't know, if I was him, I'd take some time off, and he's been in public eye for a long time, but I hope that we've not heard the last of Jeff Sessions, and God bless him and his family on their future endeavors. We, the people, deserve to be treated like Americans. Not as Republicans or Democrats, conservatives or liberals, Christians or non-Christians. We deserve to be treated as Americans. And if we get back to that, we'll get back to being the country that God would have us to be. Allowing Christians to do what we do. That's to show the love of Christ. And I know that if there are any liberals listening at this point, and we're 30 minutes in, so they probably turned me off a long time ago, but if they happen to still be listening, they probably just passed out when I talked about Christians and love. And for those Christians who don't show love, then we got to get our act together too. So wrapping up here, Ed Boston Podcast, YouTube channel. God bless you. Go out and do the right thing. And let's make America, I won't say great again but let's make America what God would have us to be. God bless, and go out and do the right thing.